Raiden helped solidify a new positive opinion on Electro, and thanks to her, some teams were recognized using Electro, while she herself revitalized National Comp, and those who had deeper pockets could run Hyper Raiden Comp, which is still super strong even to this day. And then Sumeru came out and—
Gotcha Gamer! What are you saying? Those who had deeper pockets? Frick you! Hyper Raiden is completely fine at C0. Chat, can you say with me? Okay. The main reason why my initial impression of Wanderer was so bad was because when he was released was right before an Abyss reset, and it was Husks, right? And we have Husks again, and he feels so bad against Husks. Like, actually so bad. So fucking terrible. If you don't, he's not that bad. But if you don't charge attack spam, he's not hitting all of them. His normal attack, like, hitbox is very small. Like, again, right, this is one of the issues that mostly get fixed with C6 Pharazon, because C6 Pharazon grooves them close enough that his small normal attack AoE can actually be big enough to hit more than one. But without C6 Pharazon, you're gonna need to include a grouper in your team. And when you do that, you don't have any form of, like, resistance to interruption or defensive utility, or you lose Pharazon. And both of those things make his teams a lot harder to play. Like, these are important things to mention. His issues in AoE are important to mention. I don't think I ever claimed that he just can't function in AoE, but he is a lot worse in AoE than the alternatives. Especially when he's compared directly to Xiao. Maybe I should explain why Wanderer's charge attacks are so much worse in AoE, even though the actual AoE isn't that much smaller. Let's open Paint. So, right? Let's say you're fighting 3 different enemies, right? Each enemy is gonna have a hitbox that has a certain size. Let's say it's like this, right? And like this. And like this, right? Very cool. Your attacks are also gonna have an AoE. I mean, realistically, it's more like, if they're actually grouped, it's more gonna be something like this, 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 right? Cool. If the enemies, or sorry, well, your attacks will also have a certain AoE, and the main reason why a Wanderer's attacks AoE is so underwhelming is because, let's say they have like this AoE size, right? The way that they work is the center of the AoE is gonna be on the collision point, right? And your normal attacks will always hit enemies from the front. And it will always hit the enemy that's closest to you, right? Because it's going forward. You'll never be able to hit in the middle here, or in the middle here, or in the middle here. It's always gonna be like here, or maybe here, or here, right? Which means that an AoE of this size against enemies grouped like this will hit 1, or if your angle is good and you position yourself very well, 2 enemies. You can't hit 3, right? Because you can't hit the enemy from inside here, right? Wanderer's charge attack has its center on the center of the enemy, which means that it's a lot easier for it to hit an AoE, even if the AoE is only a tiny bit bigger. Practically, if you actually play him, you will notice that your charge attacks hit an AoE a lot more reliably than your normal attacks do, right? And it's mainly because his normal attacks center will be at the front of the enemy, whereas his charge attack center is in the middle of the enemy, which means that it'll reach further behind the enemy. 3 enemies like that are pretty easy to hit with just normal attacks, if they're small enough, sure. But like, if the enemies were like this, you'd have the same thing, right? Or like this, right? Like you get the idea. Like the fact that his charge attack center originates at a different point than his normal attack center means that you can't take their size. Like, you can't just compare their size and say, well, it's X bigger and that's it, right? Like, I think a good way to think about it is like Kazuha E versus Zhongli Burst, right? They have a similar size. Alright, let's actually double check. Let's go to the gauge duel. Zhongli Burst, Kazuha skill. Okay, well, fuck. Kazuha's skill is like, hold is like a little bit bigger than Zhongli, but it doesn't reach as far forward because Zhongli's burst, the center is not on him, it's in front of him. So it can reach enemies that are further away from you. It's not about the size, it's how you use it, in other words. Real. The issue with charge attack spam water is it's just a weaker Xiao. True! True and real. Never heard Zajef be so nice to Xiao before. I love Wonder, he's my favorite character. Yeah. Xiao has some insanely good teams like Xiao Lad. No, but unironically, like I talk about Xiao sometimes and how I like Xiao is a character that isn't all that strong, but I really don't regret getting him because Xiao is like the perfect domain and event character. When the enemies are balanced like they are in domains and events, Xiao has just enough damage that he can fucking one plunge them, and when that happens, then the fact that he has actual AoE that doesn't need the enemies to start grouped makes him feel so much better than almost everything else. That's the biggest thing that Xiao has going for him. And I don't really have another character that can deal with things like that in the same way. He may be short, but he's short. Let's play Xiao's optimal build. Someone please delete all of Zajef's pav weapons? No. Wait, does this mean that if I... Okay. Well, that's alright. This is better anyways. How would I fix Dehya, not just full rework? There's multiple ways you could fix Dehya. I think that there's some things about Dehya that are actually really good and that shouldn't be changed. I like that her ult is very short. Unironically, I think that if you just fix a few of the bugs with her, you make it so that her skill doesn't just not burgeon sometimes. You make her interaction with getting frozen less cringe. Make it so you can mash out of... that you can either jump during her burst, or you can mash out of freeze with a dip button other than spacebar. Or other than the one that's also binding to your... Just... fix the fucking freeze bullshit. Fix the bug that makes it so that sometimes you just don't get your skill back when you use your skill. Right, like, obviously, you'd have to fix a lot of the bugs with her, but within her actual kit, unironically, I wouldn't change anything. I'd just change her numbers. I think her kit is really cool. Maybe make it so that you keep generating particles during your burst, but I don't even think that's necessary. Triple her numbers is the best way. Tripling her numbers would probably be a little bit too much. I think you could pretty easily double her numbers, and that would be like a nice nice place to be for a standard C0 5-star. You know? Would I think of making her scale completely with HP? You could. But meh. Like, you need another power unit to battery her anyways, and we don't have pyro supports that synergize really well with HP scalers right now. So I don't really like that idea.